Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today, we are going to continue on with our discovery of the United Church of Christ, and today in particular, we are looking at the holidays. How do we celebrate them? Why do they celebrate them? I'll let you in on all the details just after the intro. See you soon. So holidays are an exciting time, and in the United Church of Christ, that certainly is the case, most definitely. The United Church of Christ celebrates all what I would consider traditional or standard Christian holidays. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what they do for each of the holidays. Again, keep in mind that every church in the United Church of Christ operates by their own customs. So the experiences that I'm going to be sharing are from my personal church when I was part of United Church of Christ. Okay. So the first holiday that we're going to talk about is a day known as All Saints Day. This is typically on November 1st, or the Sunday that is closest to November 1st. And what they will do is they will list the name of every member or every connection that passed away in that previous year. It is said in the Bible that you shouldn't forget those that have been deceased, and so that's their way of doing it. They typically will have a communion on that Sunday when they have All Saints Day. They will also talk about All Saints. Sometimes they'll call it All Souls Day. But they will also do flowers, songs about remembrance, things like that. It tends to not be a jovial service. It tends to be more melancholy, but that's what All Saints Day or All Souls Day is. The next event that happens in the Christian calendar would be Advent. Advent is a time of preparation. It's typically 4 weeks before Christmas. Most frequently, it starts right after Thanksgiving, just because of timing. And during the 4 weeks, you are focusing on different tenets or different ideas to prepare yourself for Christ's birth on Christmas. So there's joy, love, hope, and faith. And then each week, when you went to services, you would light a different candle, because these candles form what's known as the Advent wreath. You have 4 candles, and then the middle is a taller one, and it's white. That middle candle is known as the Christ candle. That's lit on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And then each of the pillar candles that are around it are either purple, blue, or pink, depending on what the candle is. The love, you focus on love of the people in your life, the importance of your life, how God loves you, how you show your love to others. Hope, they talk about what your hopes are for the future. What hopes do you have for your children? What hopes do you have in your connection with God? What does God hope for you? Doing a lot of introspection. Advent, growing up, I didn't think was that big of a deal. So they try to make it a bigger deal for the kids, at least in the church that I was part of. They had this tradition called What's in the Box. And there was this big gift wrapped. And when Advent starts, then the whole church is decorated in Christmassy stuff. So there would be a Christmas tree, there would be decorations on the windows or the aisles, things like that. And there would always be this big gift. Now, inside that big gift was small gifts, one for every person in Sunday school. And as you went through the 4 weeks of Advent, to help you understand that Advent was a time of preparation, what they would do is they would do different things that allow you to guess what the gift was. So the first week, all you could do was look at the box and you could make guesses. Now, would they tell you if you were right? No, typically not. You typically didn't get it until the very end. But you would guess the first time just by looking at it. The second week, you could hold the box to feel how heavy it was. And then the kids would make guesses. Now, of course, kids are adorable, and the congregation that's watching this, they frequently chuckle at the kids' responses. One of my favorite responses that a child said was puppies. And I'm like, oh, heaven help us if we have I think there were 60 kids in Sunday school at that time. If we had 60 puppies in that box for over a month, that would not be a very nice gift. It just is comical the way people think sometimes. So first week, you could just make guesses by looking at it. Second week, you could hold it. The third week, you could shake it. And then based on that noise, if there were bells in there or something, they could make that decision. And then the fourth week, you would get a clue. And sometimes the pastor would give you clues along the way, and that was just their choice. But you would get a clue, and then you were typically able to open it that fourth week as well. And then they give gifts to everybody because they want to reinforce the idea that Jesus is the gift that was given at Christmas. And that's why we give gifts to other people, to remind them of the gift of Jesus. So that's the tradition that I remember in Advent growing up as a child. So we did the Advent wreath, we decorated the church, and we had What's in the Box. What's in the box was always very exciting as a child. I didn't necessarily get into the whole Advent and preparation thing as much as a child, because I don't know any child that would be like, ooh, yay, I'm excited to wait. Not so much. As a teenager in my early 20s, I definitely found more peace and found more meaning in the Advent time period. And I just changed the way I looked at it. I purposely planned out different things that I was doing each week to prepare so it was less stressful. And I changed my mindset from, oh, I have to do this to, oh, this week I get to do this. And take some of that pressure off. On Christmas, in my church in particular, Christmas Eve services are by far a much bigger deal than Christmas Day services. Christmas Eve services in the church that I was a part of was all about celebrating Jesus's birth. There was a 4:00 family church typically, and then there was the midnight church, which started at 11:00, and it literally ended when you could hear the church bells ringing that it was Christmas Day. And I remember as a child, my youngest memories, I remember piling into the vehicle, and then I believe it was my mom forgot something. Later, I came to find out that they were putting gifts out so that Santa had been there by the time we got back. Side note, that's what they did. But I remember there was something magical about going to those Christmas services. The choir was there singing. They would do Christmas songs. The church was packed. On Christmas and Easter, that tend to be when everyone came home for the holidays and you would attend church as a family. I remember services that I don't necessarily have a connection with the stories that were told, but I will always remember the church that I was a part of was German Reform at the beginning. So every year, without fail, we would have candles, and we would pass the light from the candle. They would turn all the lights off, and then we would sing by candlelight the song Silent Night. And then we would sing it in German. To this day, I know that song in German. Only one verse, but I know it in German. And there was something so beautiful about it. There were no lights. There was no accompaniment. It was just humble voices in a cold night in Wisconsin by candlelight singing this song. And it was a beautiful song. And it was something that would bring tears to my grandma's eyes, I remember. And it was the moment that I always remember. And I always remember that the last song when everybody was walking out would always be Joy to the World. So they would do Silent Night with the candlelights, and they would always do Joy to the World when we were leaving the processional. Christmas Eve services were just, there was something more simple. It was supposed to be about the heart of what you were doing there and about excited for this new birth and such a wonderful gift and just filled with awe that it was by far my favorite holiday as a Christian. It just was. There was something so beautiful and special about it. And the way that having that focus just seemed to change people's mental state. They were a little bit more friendly. When you went shopping for gifts in the grocery store or in the shopping stores, the people just seemed a little more kind, caring. It was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. I loved it. After Christmas, then they would have Epiphany. That would typically be on January 6th or the Sunday closest to that. And in my church, we would have 3 men dress up in costumes, pretending to be the wise men, and they would bring the offering forward on that day. And it was after that day that we took all the Christmas decorations down. But Epiphany Sunday was another big deal in my church growing up. Okay. After that, we would start transitioning into Lent. Lent is another time period of preparation. It is the days leading up to Easter. So for my church, they wouldn't... In the Catholic Church, they typically give up something on Fridays. That was not the case in the UCC, in my church that I was a part of. There was certainly discussion and talk about that this was the time of preparation, and Jesus gave up his life. God gave up Jesus, his son, for us. Like, what could you give up to just have some small piece of understanding? But there was also the flip of, if you didn't want to give something up, you could also add something new. So I remember one year when I was in college, instead of giving something up, I added that I was going to take the stairs every day instead of taking the elevator. I was going to use only pencil instead of pen one year. There were times where I thought about, I'm going to give up coffee, for example. Now, that was not a good thing for me to do because I don't drink coffee now. I never did. It just was one of those flippant responses that I really didn't put any heart or effort into. But again, in the United Church of Christ, what you do is all about you. You could give something up. You could pick up something new for Lent. You could not do anything for Lent, and that's completely okay. The one thing that my church did as a whole is during that Lenten preparation time, they would switch services from Thursday night services to Wednesday night services. So in my church, we had Sunday morning services, or you could come to Thursday night if that worked better for you. But during the Lenten time, they would switch it from Thursday night to Wednesday night, and they would have a soup and sandwich meal beforehand, and then you would have a short service. Now, during that soup and sandwich time, you also could do different mission work. So there were times when I was the confirmation teacher that we took t-shirts and cut them apart and made them into dog toys for the local Humane Society. There were times where we took plastic plastic like grocery bags and cut them into strips, and we wove sleeping mats for the homeless population. We've made blessing bags. We've made quilts for the hospice members. All different things that were going on during Lent. It was an opportunity to create some mission work, some way to give back. So that was Lent. Lent does start off with Ash Wednesday. In the church that I grew up with, they changed their practices. Typically, Ash Wednesday is the start of the Lenten process, and in the Catholic Church, they put they put the palms from the previous year, burn them, mix them with some kind of holy oil, and they put it on your forehead. And you're not supposed to brush it, wash it off, whatever. It's just supposed to be a symbol for the world to see that you are claiming God as your Savior and Jesus died for you, and you're supposed to leave it there until it falls off. Sometimes it's in the shape of a cross. Sometimes it just kind of looks like a dot. When I was growing up, they didn't have that. As I got older and I started teaching confirmation, then they started to do it. I personally have only ever done that once. Not that I am opposed to it, but it's just not my personal tradition. And I just didn't feel that connected to that tradition at all. But again, every church is different. So perhaps more churches do it than I did. And that's completely okay. So that's that. Lent is the period that leads up to Easter. The week before Easter is known as Palm Sunday. On that day, there are palm branches that are readily available. Some are like the big green palm branches. Some are like reeds that are folded into the shape of a cross. And without fail, on this Sunday, we would have the Sunday school kids come and they would walk down the aisle waving the palm branches as they were telling the story of Jesus when he came into the town of, I believe it was Galilee, and they were waving the palm branches and saying, Hosanna, Hosanna, and they put the palm branches down, and Jesus with the donkey rode over them and things like that. They will always have that as part of the Palm Sunday. There was lots of singing on Palm Sunday, and it was a preparation for the next week, which was going to be Easter. So Palm Sunday starts the Holy Week. Holy Week starts with Palm Sunday. Then you have, in our church, we had the Tenebrae service for Maundy, Thursday. So it's a night service on Thursday, and they basically reenact the Last Supper, and they go over what Jesus said about breaking the bread and sharing the wine and like doing all this. It's a very somber, very low lit service. And then the next day is Good Friday, when Jesus dies on the cross, and there will be an ecumenical service. So it's in the afternoon at like 2:00-ish, and it typically it's any denomination other than Catholic, because Catholic tends to do their own thing. They have like Stations of the Cross and things like that. But Baptist, Evangelical, Lutheran, Alliance, they'll all join together and they'll have this Good Friday service. And at this service, they'll talk about that Jesus died, and they'll change the colors that are draped on the cross. Again, it's not a very long service. And then comes Easter, which is, in some Christians' mindsets, the biggest holiday of the entire year. This is the day that they celebrate because this is the day that made them Christians. So in the church that I grew up with, Easter has a sunrise service at 6:00 in the morning. And then there would be a breakfast offered if you wanted it. And then there was a later service it was either 9 or 10. But it was supposed to be a joyful way to start. And the Easter service always had a big choir. Sometimes it was an all-male choir, sometimes it was the mixed choir, but it always had brass instruments. It was supposed to shaken you awake because Jesus was risen from the dead, and it's supposed to be a holy day and very exciting, and it was a huge deal. So it was a lot of work, a lot of pomp and circumstance, but Easter was a big thing. Now, as my family, after services, we tended to do the Easter baskets, Easter egg hunts. Was I good at finding my Easter basket? No, I was not. Not at all. And I remember that my sisters and I, we couldn't tell the other person where it was, but we would give them clues or things like that. I was not very good at finding mine. So as my years progressed, sometimes I would just watch to see where my other sisters were looking. And then if they found something and then put it back, but they didn't take it out, then I would go and check to see if mine was over there because I was a little bit sneaky. So that's what my church did for Easter. And then you tended to have a family dinner of some sort. After Easter would come Pentecost. That's a less special holiday in the United Church of Christ. That is when they celebrate that the dove came down, and that was supposed to be the Holy Spirit that came to be among the people and had the flames that appeared on everybody's head, but it wasn't really fire. So on that day, you'll see a lot of doves, paper doves typically, and a lot of pictures of fire. And basically, it's supposed to be a rejuvenating day. Do you do anything else special? No, not really. There will be a song or two that they'll use, not consistently throughout all the different years, just like Easter. And so Christmas has Silent Night and Joy to the World. Easter, there's a couple of different songs they'll use. One is Up from the Grave, He Arose. It's not the same, but the Pentecost, there isn't necessarily a set one that they do. Do they celebrate federal and state holidays? Absolutely. You can celebrate any holiday you want in the United Church of Christ. If you want to celebrate Halloween, you go for it. Celebrate Thanksgiving, 4th of July, all of that. There's absolutely no problem with that. If you want to celebrate Valentine's Day, doesn't matter that it's called Saint Valentine's, and the United Church of Christ don't really follow saints. They still celebrate St. Valentine's Day in the schools, and that's not a problem. But yeah, otherwise, so that's the holidays. There was always something going on. It wasn't always spectacular, but it was always something going on. And as a child, it was always neat to have different things going on. So there you go. Now you know all about the holidays and how we celebrated them in the United Church of Christ. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to tune in next time, because next time we're going to talk about the general worship service of the United Church of Christ, what that was like, what you would expect if you went to a worship service. So I will see you next time. And until then, make sure you take care. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. Bye-bye.